We're Toony, we're all a little loony. And in this cartoony, we're invading your TV. We're comic dispensers, we crack up all the censors. On Tiny Toon Adventures, get a dose of comedy. So here's at the acres, it's a whole wide world apart. Our home sweet home stands alone, a cartoon work of art.
The scripts were rejected, expect the unexpected.
On Tiny Toon Adventures, it's about to start.
They're furry, they're funny.
They're Baz and Buster Bunny. Montana Max has money. Elmira is a pain. He's hunting
And plucky.
busy devil yucky. Her balls are yucky and Go-Go is insane. At Acme University we earn our Toon degree. The teaching staff's been getting laughs since 1933. We're tiny, we're toony, we're all a little loony. It's Tiny Toon Adventures, come and join the fun. And now our song is done.
Hello, you're listening to Storytelling Saga, the podcast that shares stories. I'm your host, Allie, and this week I'm discussing Tiny Toon Adventures, created by Tom Ruegger. The show premiered on CBS on September 14th, 1990. It ran for 3 seasons with a total of, who knows, 98 episodes, and oh boy, this is already a mess. I'm rolling with it. And it concluded in 1992. I myself watched it in reruns on Nickelodeon when it aired in syndication on Nickelodeon from 95 to 99. So, this show really is just so 90s. And I know, no duh, it was made in the 90s. But it's just so much of the humor with the pop culture references and stuff, just so very 90s. It's just so hilarious, though, my goodness. It's such a fun show to revisit. And I absolutely loved this theme song. It was, if you recall, back when I shared my top 10 favorite theme songs back in episode 25 of this podcast, it was my number 10. But oh my goodness, it's so dang catchy. I just love this theme song. God, it puts me in such a good mood. It's just there's just so much going on in the theme song, introducing you to all the characters, all the gags in the theme song, the music itself, of course. It's composed by Bruce Broughton. Amazing theme song, goodness. And you know what? This show, to me, is just such a love letter to Looney Tunes. It's great how the characters, obviously being tiny counterparts to the each respective Looney Tune character, but it's very much its own show as well. And Bugs Bunny, in fact, made his debut in 1940, so he's 80 years old this year. And he looks great for 80. He looks like he hasn't aged a day. Who doesn't love Looney Tunes? Looney Tunes is so prolific, such an influential cartoon, endlessly influential in animation, and just like with all of those greats in animation, Chuck Jones, Tex Avery, Bob Clampett, really amazing. And this show is a collaboration with Steven Spielberg's production company, Amblin, not Tamblin, goodness. I'm leaving it in. I'm leaving in all my mistakes. I'm just rolling with it. Amblin Entertainment. And as a kid, the things I loved most about this show, that's still the stuff that I enjoy now as an adult. The fourth wall breaks, the slapstick humor, the meta humor, and now noticing all of the many, many parodies and pop cultural references. And it's just so, this show is just very much a 90s show, with all of those references being so timely in the 90s. Because I know that soon the Animaniacs, what's it called? I can't think of the word, reboot, is coming to Hulu soon, and I watched all these episodes on Hulu, these Tiny Toon episodes. So, just a quick tangent, I never really watched whatever that's called, Animaniacs. Oh my god, it's a disaster, this episode already, but this is what happens when I'm just kind of rolling with things and it's late at night, I'm recording, I'm just whatever. Hope you're appreciating this weird, wild energy that I have right now from watching a bunch of Tiny Toons. This is, goodness gracious. Anyway, I'll just move on from that, but Animaniacs coming back, and with Animaniacs, I just know very few things about Animaniacs. I've only seen, here and there I've seen episodes, but I don't know. The main thing I watched when I was younger was Wacko's Wish, actually, the TV movie, but it's a lot of similar voice actors from that show and this show. And this show was, so Tom Ruegger created that show too. But this is the one that I grew up with on Nickelodeon specifically. I'm sure if Animaniacs had been on Nickelodeon, I would have watched that as well. But gosh, this show's just great. The music, the characters, such fun with the wraparounds with Babs and Buster Bunny. No relation. I'll tell you, when I was a little kid watching this show, I would ask my mom more than once. I remember distinctly asking her more than once because I just couldn't comprehend it somehow. Asking her, what does no relation mean? And she would just say, oh, it just means that they're not related. It's just a coincidence. She would just explain it to me and I just wouldn't get it. My little kid mind. So I'd be like, oh, and then I'd sort of get it. And then I'd be like, oh, wait, so that means they're not brother and sister or whatever. Goodness. It's just a coincidence that they both have the last name Bunny. But I hadn't seen a bunch of episodes. I just watched as many, just a bunch of random episodes, despite ones that I had watched when I was younger. But I had never seen the first episode, the Looney beginning. And again, so meta with them creating the show and seeing the process of the cartoonist drawing Babs and Buster. Well, Buster first and then Babs. And Buster voiced by Charlie Adler and Babs Bunny voiced by Tress MacNeille. Tress MacNeille is so great in this as Babs, in this role with all of the impressions she does. Just really awesome. And then, of course, obviously she's Dot on Animaniacs too. But something cool that I didn't notice, who would as a kid, but that Buster is based specifically on the Chuck Jones version of Bugs Bunny, who was the calm and collected foil to Jones's incarnation of Daffy Duck and attacked others only when provoked, whereas Babs is based on the Bob Clampett version of Bugs Bunny, who was a constant trickster that liked to disguise himself to fool others. So, I myself would say that I prefer because that is interesting since the Looney Tunes have had so many different incarnations, including the latest version, which is on HBO Max, which I haven't seen because I don't have that because there's too many streaming services, goodness. But I would say my favorite version of, because I used to watch Looney Tunes on Cartoon Network, and my favorite version of Bugs Bunny was the Chuck Jones version. Definitely that version of him just kind of waiting to, just being, with a sly look on his face while Daffy Duck is going insane and just kind of waiting to strike. And of course, besides the wise guy, what's up, Doc? That too, that's great. But, I think one of the most iconic and, favorite Looney Tune bits is the rabbit season, duck season, that whole thing. But with Babs and Buster Bunny, they're just a great dynamic duo. I would say an underrated dynamic duo in animation in general, and you can't have one without the other. I can't really say which one I prefer. They're just both great. They're both great partners in crime, great foils, great comedic duo. And, all the counterparts. Plucky Duck, based on Daffy Duck, I always loved Hampton J. Pig. He was cute. He's so sweet. And it's funny in the first episode when he says, oh, I'm just here to react to characters funnier than me. And I oh, poor Hampton. And Plucky Duck, he being Daffy's counterpart, the distinction really is because they're obviously meant to be similar personality-wise, but the distinction really is that Plucky is more so chasing stardom, whereas Daffy Duck is more so chasing the glory. And I know that's just kind of very similar, but Plucky being just kind of arrogant, greedy, selfish, and Plucky is based on the later incarnation of Daffy Duck being the foil to Bugs Bunny. So the later foil, so Bugs Bunny being the cooler, calmer, collected type, and Daffy, of course, being more of the manic, the woohoo, woohoo, the wild version of Daffy Duck. And Hampton, though he is Porky Pig's tiny counterpart, he doesn't have, the speech impediment. He doesn't do that, but he's a sweet character. And I always loved, even though she's a villain, I always loved Elmira Duff, voiced by Cree Summer, who I mentioned last week when I discussed Codenamed Kids Next Door, number 5. I'm pretty sure that Cree Summer has said that Elmira Duff is one of her favorite characters she's voiced. Oh my god, Elmira, so funny. Being the counterpart to Elmer Fudd, So Duff, Fudd, spelled backwards. And, oh my god, she's hysterical because just, how she just loves animals to death. I want to hug you and squeeze you and, like, oh my god, squeeze you into pieces. Like, oof. And the fact that she had that I didn't know it was literally a gerbil skull in her hair bow. Like, I knew it was a skull, but it's literally a gerbil skull. They say that. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I also always loved another villain in this show, Montana Max, because especially just his voice, that always stood out to me as a kid. I love his voice, voiced by Danny Cooksey, aka Stoop Kid from Hey Arnold and a bunch of other stuff. And I know he's just a spoiled brat, but he's just funny. Like, with his voice, it just always stood out to me as a kid, so. And actually, though, I always thought Elmira was 5 years old or something, but apparently they're all teenagers, because in that first episode, Babs says, oh, I'm 14 and I already have wrinkles, so I guess they're teenagers, evidently. And they go to Acme Looniversity, where they learn from the greats, the Looney Tunes, and so many other great, ridiculous characters. Go-Go, Dodo, and Fifi Le Fume, voiced by Kath Soucie, the counterpart of Pepe Le Pew. And there's Shirley the Loon McLoon, who's just this, like, Valley Girl duck. And I always loved Furball, too, that unlucky cat, poor Furball. And then there's Dizzy Devil, counterpart to Tasmanian Devil, voiced by Maurice LaMarche. There's Sweetie Bird, counterpart to Tweety Bird, voiced by Candy Milo. And Calamity Coyote, obviously Wile E. Coyote. And then there's Little Beeper, counterpart to Roadrunner. And I always loved Little Sneezer, that little mouse who would just sneeze so big, voiced also by Kath Soucie. And Foulmouth is hilarious, voiced by Rob Paulsen. You just be like, yeah, daggum, whatever. And then there's Arnold the Pitbull, too, also voiced by Rob Paulsen, and he's just like an Arnold Schwarzenegger character. And he's not tiny, though. It's just, like, weird. And that little doggy, Byron Bassett, he's so cute, too. And there was a character, Merry Melody, because of the Merry Melodies cartoon shorts, too. So, a whole collection of wacky, ridiculous characters. But as a kid, really what I loved was all the fourth wall breaking, like with Babs and Buster talking directly to the audience, since this show really is intended for kids, whereas Looney Tunes, it's for people of all ages, adults and kids alike, all love it. But for this, it really was just, like, intended for kids specifically, for that Saturday morning audience, as they said. And just all the, so many references to classic movies and shows and celebrities, and it's just really great. I've watched a bunch of episodes, but I feel like just pointing out specific things, it's just, I don't know, with this show, it's just, I can tell you specific things about it that I loved as a kid, but I don't know. I do love the TV movie, which was like a direct-to-video movie, How I Spent My Vacation, and they broke it up on TV, so it would just be each of the plots, like its own episode. So the one I would see the most was the whole subplot with Plucky on the vacation, like going to Happy World Land with Hampton and his family. And it's just hilarious when they get there, Happy World Land, where it's like, oh, there's 6 thrill rides and 400 gift shops. Oh my god. They just ride the monorail and that's it. And all the hijinks, of course, and it's just like an endlessly long car ride. And they pick up that hitchhiker who's a murderer, too. Wild, oh my gosh. And when the mom says, oh no, don't unroll the window, dear, we don't want people to think that we can't afford air conditioning, like, what? Oh my goodness. And we're listening to the radio describing the guy that they had picked up, the hitchhiker guy, and then it's like, oh, and she just turns it off, saying, oh, there's so much sensationalism in the media, tell me about it. Gosh, but so funny. And with Babs and Buster doing their whole, like, water gun fight the whole time, and Elmira when she goes to the zoo to get a kitty, like, with the cheetah. Gosh, and it's just, like, her being oblivious, of course, to her own destruction, that she wants to love and squeeze these animals to death, and just so happy and cheerful about it, and she's terrible, though, she's abusive, but that's the joke. That's, like, even with Looney Tunes in general, you always know the joke. You always know the punchline. Like, with Wile E. Coyote, he's never going to catch the Roadrunner. Or just all that stuff. Or, like, with this show with Fifi LaFume, how she always wants to find love and she repels people because she's a skunk. So it's just always funny though. And this show also definitely gave me a deeper appreciation for music in general, with all of the orchestral pieces in this show, with the theme song of course, and with certain iconic orchestral music, just like in Looney Tunes itself, of course. Like when you think of, say, Rabbit of Seville, which is the song Barber of Seville by Rossini. You know it, of course. And in this show, though, that episode with, like, springtime, and then the, like, Elmer Fudd is Cupid, and then he just gives it to that Dodo guy, and he's like, okay, I'll do a good job, and then, of course, he's an idiot, the guy, and then Babs gets hit with a plunger, and Babs and Montana Max, and then the song, the classic love song, the Romeo and Juliet theme by Tchaikovsky. That was the first time I heard that song. So, it's that classic theme that's been used so many times. It's that classic love at first sight theme with all the strings, and it's beautiful. And that's just, one example, but one that I remember distinctly as a kid. And I did feel like as a kid that the show was a little like meant for an old, because I was really young though watching this show, so I always felt like, I'm watching Tiny Toons, because it felt like it was supposed to be for older kids a little bit. I don't know. The humor, I guess is what I'm trying to say, that felt more advanced to me somehow compared to other shows that I watched when I was younger, because I guess with the slapstick and that kind of stuff. But even now, like watching it, like the meta humor, I'm always a fan of that. And another great episode that I hadn't seen, though, was Toon Takeover, like when they try to take over Babs, Buster, and Plucky, and they're gonna like make their own cartoon. Like any cartoon, when they make their own cartoon, and then there's all that self-deprecating humor, like with the writers all trying to take credit for a joke, and then the animation process and Plucky saying, I drew 4 drawings, and it's like, okay, only like 6,000 more. So always like showing how difficult it is to make a cartoon, and then always the end product is terrible, but then like the guys are laughing at it, so then like it worked out for them, even though they didn't want to make comedy. And I always loved the Christmas episode as a kid, because I loved the updated theme song, parody of It's a Wonderful Life, with Buster wanting to leave the show. It's like, it's the end of the picture, like the end of the film strip, literally. And it's like that Jimmy Stewart type character talking to Buster, that rabbit, and then it turns out to be Bugs, of course. Bugs being Buster's mentor in particular. And there's that great episode with Babs wanting her own female mentor, and then she learns about Honey, who looks like an early version of Dot from Animaniacs. So that's interesting. Honey and Bosco, the two of them. And then there's that whole parody of Field of Dreams, like with the voice telling her everything. And it's like a cute thing though, saying laughter keeps Toons young. So then Honey is rejuvenated when everyone watches her old cartoons again, and then she reunites with the person that was like there the whole time, the gatekeeper of the videos, who turned out to be her old partner Bosco. So it's so cute too. And that episode that parodies Citizen Kane is great too, Citizen Max, and he's saying Acme, and it's a parody of when right before Citizen Kane dies he says Rosebud, and then the whole movie is just trying to figure out what that last word, his final word, what it meant. And that's a great, the movie's a classic, obviously, but in this show, then it turns out he just actually said acne. Like, it's so dumb. Gosh. That episode with them at the prom, too. Prom is her everything. Like, prom, that one's funny, too, with them at the prom, and then Buster can't dance, and then Elmira wants Monty to take her to the dance, and he insults her, and then afterwards he's like, well, maybe you're not so bad, and you're not, like, I forget what he says, but it was funny. Like, he's so stupid. Gosh. I just really love his voice. It's just, like, one of those things that stuck with me as a kid. Like, if you just remember certain things distinctly like that, and Elmira's voice, too. Just, like, certain things that were just so distinct that just stay in your memory. So, I don't know. But there's also a really funny joke to me in that episode when Babs is waiting for Buster to call her to ask her to the prom, and she's in her house, which is underground, because bunnies are underground, and also she has hundreds of little siblings. That's hilarious too. But the phone rings, she answers it, and then the person says, "Hello, Babs, this is the President of the United States." And she says, "Why are you calling me? I'm waiting for an important call." She just hangs up. That was so funny to me. It's just so dumb. Oh my gosh. Just classic animation, gags, and all that. There is just, like I said, a deep appreciation for their predecessors, people who worked on Looney Tunes during its original run in the 40s and everything. I did also like that episode, Hollywood Plucky, with Plucky wanting to sell his movie script, and then they go to Hollywood, and they gotta work at that restaurant, and Plucky thinking it's a role, because the guy tells him, like, "Oh yeah, it's a role, so you're just a waiter," and then Hampton is the valet. By the end, then he tries to sell the script. He's like, "Oh yeah, I already did that movie script, but with Babs and Buster, of course." Oh, and one I always loved as a kid was the episode when it's just all the music parodies, like MTV, countdown of the music videos. But actually there was another one before that with just other songs that I hadn't seen that one before. It was They Might Be Giants and just songs like that, Respect, and it ended with a segment parodying, whatever word you want to use, parodying Fantasia's The Sorcerer's Apprentice segment. And I didn't know The Sorcerer's Apprentice is actually a poem, so that in itself is based on a poem. I didn't know that. That's cool. But the other one was with those songs, It's in His Kiss, and The Name Game, with Elmira singing. And I'll tell you something that I find embarrassing, but it's not really that embarrassing, but to me it kind of is that the segment with Do You Love Me, that part, I always thought that these were actual songs from Tiny Toons. I didn't know they were actual songs. I didn't realize until years later, maybe when I was a teenager or something, when I heard it, I was like, "Oh wait, this is a real song? Do You Love Me?" I thought it was from Tiny Toons, so... Gosh, so even like It's in His Kiss, I didn't know these were really old songs that they're parodying, and Yakety Yak, so that's funny. Gosh, it's just silly, I don't know. I did just always like the dynamic between Babs and Buster, and any semi whatever, whether comical or not, any romantic moments between them, and for the most part it was played up for comedy, but there was certain things here and there, of course, because they're a duo, but that's why I loved the Christmas episode, like when she's jealous that he's talking that, I think it's Cher, it's supposed to be Cher, the woman that's like is supposed to be in their play, and then Babs is like, "Oh, so what were you whispering to her about?" And then she says, "Oh, he was asking what to get you for Christmas," and she said, "Oh, what did she suggest, a tattoo?" And he says, "No, this," and he kisses her. I always loved that as a kid, because, anything with romance, I was just always a fan of. And then even in the How I Spent My Vacation, there's like little moments between them, but one that's cute is because I first saw the full thing several years back, but so this is maybe my second or third time watching it. But one cute moment that I like is when they're in the tunnel, like with they're in the tunnel, and then they're about to go off the bridge. It's like, "Oh, there's no more the bridge is out." And Babs is saying, "Oh, Buster, I never got the chance to tell you." And he just says, "Shh, I feel the same way." Like, that's cute. And then there's like a literal plot hole, and Babs says, "Oh, I was wondering how those hack writers are going to wrap this story up." Gosh, the self-deprecating humor. So all the meta humor, like I said, I always love that stuff. So it's just a really great, fun show with great characters and just a lovely homage to Looney Tunes in general, and just a really fun show to revisit, and just very 90s show, and really enjoyable with all the parodies. There was also a parody of Who Framed Roger Rabbit with Who Bopped Bugs Bunny. That was great too. Another one I hadn't seen, actually. I'm just sitting, like, the theme song stuck in my head right now, so... Oh, you know what? One other thing I wanted to mention was that one random band segment, which was One Beer. I had heard of it. I saw it years ago. I don't know how I even heard of it, but I watched it years ago, and then I rewatched it now because I was like, oh wait, I gotta rewatch that one random band episode and just about the dangers of drinking alcohol. But it's just so funny because it's Buster, Plucky, and Hampton. They just each take a sip of beer. They're already wasted. Talk about lightweights, but just to get the message across. And they steal a cop car, they're just driving, and they go off a cliff and they die. And then they rise up, their angel costumes, and then Buster just says, well, I hope the kids got the message. Yeah. And then Plucky says, yeah, drinking is uncool. So I could see why it was banned, but then, why was it even made in the first place? It was just going to be banned. But, I mean, that's why they make a point to show that they're fine, though, that they just acted all of that to show you that it's bad to drink, especially don't drink and drive. That's terrible. Good God. But, it vaguely reminds me of what was it called? The cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue, which was that video that actually was also made in 1990, so that too is 30 years old this year. And my health teacher had us watch it every year from I want to say first grade, no, maybe not first, third grade to 8th grade. So every year we watched that, and that's just a PSA on the dangers of doing drugs in particular. And it's just a big collaboration of a big crossover, all these classic cartoons with Bugs Bunny and Garfield and Alf and Winnie the Pooh and the Chipmunks, Alvin and the Chipmunks, and Muppet Babies and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, etc., etc. And so it just kind of reminds me of that, the old PSA, don't drink. So, that was banned, but whatever. It was good, though. And also, just on another random note, just how so many of these voice actors, just knowing a bunch of them are also on Rugrats. They were also did voice on Rugrats, like Kath Soucie, of course, and Cree Summer, and Tress MacNeille, and Joe Alasky, who played Grandpa Lou. So that was in the second version of Rugrats after the original voice actor had passed. So, and you know what? I could vaguely hear Grandpa Lou with Plucky Duck. And also Don Messick voiced, the late Don Messick voiced, and also the late Joe Lasky now, sadly too, but the late Don Messick voiced Hampton, and he also had voiced Scooby-Doo, the original voice of Scooby-Doo. And Frank Welker does a bunch of voices too on the show, because also he's the original voice of Fred Jones on Scooby-Doo. Oh, it's also funny when they poke fun at Steven Spielberg too on the show. It's oh yeah, the guy who's just in name only for this show. And so many references and gags, like with him wearing an E.T. hat when in the Christmas special, and Buster is just so happy to be home in Acme Acres, and he kisses Steven Spielberg. He's like, Happy Hanukkah, you. And then also there's a part in the movie when they go flying, Babs and Buster, and they just run into Elliot and E.T., on the bicycle in the sky. So good old self-references. And also that reminds me, the credits of the movie are hilarious too. Just all this kind of cheeky humor with with one of them saying, list of morals, pick one. Cherish your youth, enjoy your summer. TV movies shouldn't have 18 different plots. But, gosh, they're funny though. It only had 5 plots? I don't really know exactly. And it's clever too that since they're able to cut all the plots, then just have them air as separate episodes. But again, I really only remember the one with Plucky and Hampton. But then they intersect here and there though, which is cool too. But then they're able to have standalone. So it works out. So it's a really great movie with their animation too. Oh, and also it was animated by a whole bunch of different studios. So with each episode, there was a different animated studio that would work on it. There were several different studios, I guess, just in rotation for the show. 7 of them. That's interesting. So yeah, just as a love of Looney Tunes too with this show, because I used to watch Looney Tunes on Cartoon Network, the original Looney Tune shorts. And with this show too, with them having they had a bunch of half-hour episodes too, but then mostly the 7-minute, the 3 7-minute segments with the wraparounds of Babs and Buster. And also it's so funny whenever Buster would call her Barbara Ann, and she would say, don't call me that. That's funny, that's my aunt's name, Barbara Ann, but I never called her that either. And it's also cute every time he called her Babsy. That's cute too. But again, it's all just for the comedy of it all. Just it's fun. It's just a really great show and a lot of fun to watch. And that's all, folks. And with that is going to conclude this week's episode of Storytelling Saga. As always, you can follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Send me a message in the contact section of storytellingsaga.com or send me an email at storytellingsaga@gmail.com. Next week, I'm going to be doing my first ever author spotlight. I'm going to be discussing the works of Mitch Albom. Until then, thank you for listening, and remember, write what you love.
And that's a wrap.